Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spore. Let's open our meeting. We'll give a sec for a couple of folks to have a seat. We'll open our meeting with a serenity prayer. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And with that, I'll give you Pastor Paul.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody's here. It's good to know how many people are over on the other side of that camera lens, and I want to welcome everybody tonight. I'm kind of excited in that, there's a lot of smiling faces in here. And some not so smiling, but that's okay. It's all working out. So the thing is that I kind of got excited about tonight because the truth is I wasn't real sure where we were going to go with this thing until about 2 hours ago. And Pastor Bob and I have had that conversation many times. This is not something you just throw together, but for some reason it just felt like it was just coming together, and God did what he does. Papa's so good. He comes through every time, and he comes through with me and with the Holy Spirit. So what I want to talk about tonight is reeling in the years. Right? Oh, yeah. And so, have you ever got lost in an old song, or it may kind of, one that just kind of takes you back to a certain time of your life, and I was thinking about that. And, for some of us, it may kind of create a feeling, kind of like I felt way back then. Or it may just bring back a memory or something like that. It's kind of like every time I hear the Eagles, it always reminds me of being in my dad's convertible and riding with him, and he would be singing to it. And the funny thing is that my dad grew up singing opera, and so he would sing the Eagles in an opera kind of sound. It was kind of weird, but at any rate, take it to the limit. I was like, okay, let's not do that one anymore. At any rate, so it just, like I said, it just kind of reminds me every time I hear, anything from the Eagles, man, it just takes me back, And I was sitting there the other day, and I heard an old song, and it kind of made me stop and think. And it's so interesting because it's a song that I've heard many times. I mean, and have it on my playlist and all that kind of stuff. And y'all can guess exactly what it was, right? It was Steely Dan's, one of their songs. And it's an oldie but goodie. And I'm just singing along, man. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to hear what I'm saying. And it's a little different than I've ever seen it before, right? It was interesting. It was like, I don't know. Y'all remember Reeling in the Years? Okay, so that's where we get this from, right? And I'm just jamming on it, reeling in the years, right? And but all of a sudden I'm hearing it. And it's kind of interesting, It was like, first thing I thought about was, what's so interesting about this song? And it took me back to when I was in high school, and I used to ride with one of my teachers to school, and he'd always put in Steely Dan. And I thought, yeah, that's what I remember. But what I keep forgetting was that I was either pretty much wasted or drunk or whatever right during that period of time. And it wasn't the best time in my life. It's kind of interesting. We kind of remember the party aspect, but we don't remember everything else. And so I realized, wow, maybe that song's not so, I don't know. It just began to stir some things up. And so I got to looking at it, and I was like, started hearing the second part. Is what? Are you reeling in the years, stowing away the time? Are you gathering up the tears? Have you had enough of mine? And somehow that just hit me funky. It was like, dude, I used to do that. And it's like, I used to live that way, but today I choose not to live in my past. See, that's one of the things that will hold us back in recovery more than anything else is living in the past, right? And I thought about that, and it got me thinking about this whole concept for a title, and I don't know, it worked for me. But the thing is I started realizing, and the question I had was, how many people are stuck in their past? And I mean stuck, man. Not like, oh yeah, I remember some things in my past. Stuck in their past, right? It's one of those things where people, they may be stuck in their past because something that happened to them, a tragedy, a trauma, right? I've always said, how sick is it for someone to have 15 minutes of pleasure with a child that will affect that child's life for the next 65 years? But that's real, right? And a lot of times people hide in that. They're still living in that. And they don't know how to break away, and they don't know how to move forward, you know? But I was like, a lot of people? And all of a sudden it was like, the real question is, why? Why would you want to do that? Because living in yesterday, for a lot of people, is just a real form of escape, right? It's funny, I can still remember being in Chastain Park, right? You know, hanging out, doing the do. And somehow I think it's all great. But I forgot about the time that a buddy of mine was stabbed to death. Forgot about that. Forgot about the time that the police decided that maybe we needed to spend the night somewhere else. I forget those things. So I can't afford to live back in a past like that. A lot of times we have the luxury of kind of shaping up our past, kind of creating it and molding it in the way that we want to. I have a son, I kid you not. He, in his mind, whatever, remembers me when he was in high school, grabbing him by his ears and throwing him up against the wall. Okay, let me explain something to you. This kid's 6'5.5", okay? I'm 5'11", right? And something about detaching ears from, but in his mind, no one else in the family remembers that, but he remembers it that way. So I can go one of two ways. I can say, son, if I did that to you, I apologize. Let me make amends. Or I can go, I have my truth, he has his truth, and they're just both okay. I'm not willing to do that because the truth is the truth, right? But the point is that sometimes we don't necessarily take our past and put it in all reality, right? I mean, it's funny. It's like I remember as a kid growing up, and there was this huge hill right next to my house, and we would slide down it on, cardboard and all the things that kids do, right? And I don't know, somebody cut that hill down because I went by there about 30 years later, and that hill was a lot smaller than I used to remember it, right? And that's how a lot of times it is. It's kind of like when I did my first 4-step. Man, I mean, 2/3 of it may have had some truth in it, right? The rest of it was kind of a novel. Truth isn't always conducive to living in the present. Because, see, I may have to accept some things about my life. Then there's some of those who daydream on what they wish it had been like. They've convinced themselves it's a certain way. And some of that is for protection. There are children who go through things, divorce situations, whatever it may be, and they kind of create a daydream kind of deal, and it's how they survive. And I get that, and that's okay as a child. But I can't keep living in it. Things have got to change. Matter of fact, if I keep living in that, isn't that living in a state of denial? And what do we know about denial? It ain't a river in Africa, right? We know that one for sure. So the point is that I can't afford to continue to live in denial because, you see, then I can't be honest about myself today. Matter of fact, I see a lot of women that I've worked with especially that it's kind of like they have this view of the family and especially the father relationship that has been kind of shaped by mom, right? And the mother had a way of kind of shaping this. And I get that, and it's a different generation at that time. Like when I grew up, a lot of times moms may have stayed at home or something. They had to justify why dad wasn't there every day, right? Or that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's something I've seen over and over again. But one of the things that I've also noticed is that I have to realize that my relationships with my family, I have to step back sometime and go, you know what? My parents did the best job they could. And they really didn't do a bad job, really. When I really look back and go, wow, look at what they were working with. wasn't that great, So, but they were able to be the best parents that they could be for me at the time, and that's one of the big things I had to do. But I want to look at page 85 in the big book, and just read a couple of things out of it. And let's see. Where we want to start. How about this? We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. Wow. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid any longer. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in what? Fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And man, anybody who's been in recovery, we hear that a lot, right? We hear that particular, rest on your laurels, And I've heard it, man, I have heard everything from sitting like a dog to plants, right? And it's somewhere in between. And that's what I learned. And one of the things is that I have to realize is that, what was that about? Well, it was about the Olympics, right? And when they would win, they would get this wreath, right? A laurel they'd place on their head. And they could hang that laurel up and say, wow, look at me. I came in first and whatever. Except there's a problem when you cut a plant, right? What happens? It dies, right? So now what do I got up there? I got this laurel, boom, which is really just a dead vine sitting there. And yet I'm going to tell you the story about how great I was. All the great things I did. And the problem with that is they become fish stories. You know what I'm talking about? It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And reality floats away at some point. Because we don't always remember things like they happen. So one of the things that I have to begin to realize is that I can't rest on what I did. And by the way, that's good or bad. I've seen people, man, pride themselves on things that they have accomplished, but I've also seen them pride themselves on how much dope they used, how many women they've been with, whatever it may be. So it doesn't even have to be a positive. It's just something that's my story. And here's the funny thing, and I've said it so many times, it's true. How many times have you had somebody who has that story and they got it rehearsed so well that if you have to stop them for a minute and go do something and come back, they pick it up, boom, right where they left off, right? It's like, this is my story and that's the one I'm going to stand behind. Dude, let it go. Let it go. You know, the best part about that with the laurels is, what is it saying? It's saying that I can't be in good spiritual condition if I keep doing what? Living out there, back there. Because, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't exactly live a real victorious, godly, spiritual life. Don't get me wrong, I was very spiritual minded. Just didn't involve God. Right? Because, I was so into whatever I needed to be good with you. But really, at the end of the day, the only person that was running my life was me. And I suck at that. I don't know about y'all, but I do. Right? Actually, I know what happens because the book tells me so, right? It tells me what happens when I start living in self-centeredness. And so my self-centeredness is way back here. I'm trying to get out of it here. See, I don't want to be in it any longer. I don't want to keep on living like I could. But what I have to realize is at some point I got to begin to trust Papa God. And we see that in Isaiah 43, 18 and 19. Excuse me. But forget all that. Don't forget all that. But forget all that. It's nothing compared to what I'm going to do. That's what God's saying. Come on. For I am about to do something what? New. So why don't you get out of the way? See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? No, sometimes I don't. I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wastelands. My life was a dry wasteland. And yet God came through, Papa came through and began to put these waters, rivers of life in me. And the thing is, I had to let go of the dry areas. I couldn't live in that any longer. and neither can you. It won't work like that. So is there ever a right time to look at our past? Absolutely. But here's the deal. We get the opportunity to look at this where? In our what? Fourth step. It is so funny. It's so funny when you're on. I love when I first came in the program. I was like, man, I'd be at Biscayne. I'd be looking at all the different steps, and I was like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, 1, 2. Oh yeah, I'm crazy. 3, 4. Oh no, ain't happening. And 5, ain't no way. Right? And the irony to it is we act like that's the toughest thing that we're going to deal with. And I love how the 4th step tells us what? It tells me that I'm going to take a moral inventory of myself. So what does that mean? Just what it says. Take an inventory. Don't worry about, oh my God, what if I expect? It says in a general way, man. This is what I got to do. Here we are. Here's how it affected me, and here's what happened when I affected others. And I kind of laugh now because when I first came in, the big thing was, man, you would do your 5th step and then you would light it on fire. And then you got to go do the 8th step and you needed the 5th step. You need your 4th step. I don't know. At any rate, that's a whole other deal for another day. It just got kind of weird, didn't it? But the point is that if I'm supposed to take an inventory, a moral inventory of myself, then when I do that, I begin to do what? Let go of the past. So one of the most interesting things is when I take an inventory at work, I don't sit there and go, that can was crushed, and I saw who did it, and they hit it with a hammer, and I think they really meant to do it so that it would hurt my feelings. And there's a bent can. Bye-bye. And it really is as simple as that. And yet we make it more because you see, part of the problem is we don't want to let go of our past. Why? Dude, it's familiar. And we love sitting in what's familiar, even if it's holding us back. And that's one of the big things that we have to do is we have to begin to say, you know what? There it is in my 4th step. I've taken it out with my 5th step. To who? To myself. Well, I was there when it happened. Before God, he was there when it happened. That's the funny one. Oh, I can't do that. I can't say any of that because God may hear me. What's he going to hear? He was already there, right? He experienced it with you. And the other human, the other person, I don't know about you guys, but I found a lot of stuff out about my sponsor when I did my 5th step. Isn't it amazing? And I found out that what he did was let go of his past. And life got better. See, some people actually say, if I always live in the now and never look at the past, it's like I may forget it. Really? Forget it. Forget it, right? I don't have to shut the door on it, but it isn't going to affect me anymore. That's the point. My past. When I went through trauma therapy, guess what I got to do? I got to let go of it. Had no more effect on me. Wasn't important anymore. One of the things that I also see is I see people who sometimes don't realistically see the past. In other words, they want to believe that things may have been better than it was. And I was thinking about a sponsee that I have who is actually going through something where the memory of their siblings is different than the reality of what it is today. And it took them a long time to realize that maybe I'm trying to justify what my brothers did. And the truth is, and maybe I could have done more, or maybe it's my fault, or maybe whatever. But here's the thing. The biggest thing we're learning is their brother's a tool. Simple as that. And so that's hard to begin to rationalize years later, but it's like that is the truth. And the best part about that is when we begin to see the truth, we start realizing I don't have to be controlled by that anymore. I'm done with that. Right? I'm through. Done. Move on. What a great release and freedom there is in that. Maybe and sometimes people go through a mourning process when they let go of their past, especially when they start realizing maybe it wasn't the same as they thought about it. But I want to look at a saying. We can take a look. It says, only the present moment is real and available to us. That's true, right? Okay, so the peace we desire is not some distant future, but it is something we can realize in the present moment now, right? And if you're a good Buddhist, you'll understand that. Point is that we have to begin to understand I can't live out there and I can't live back there. See, the word's kind of interesting with that, right? It says that God's mercy and grace is renewed. How often? Daily. Matter of fact, it's even specific, isn't it? Every morning. So here's the thing. If I want to live in God's grace, and I want to live in God's mercy, then I really don't want to live in yesterday, and I don't want to be walking towards tomorrow. I want to stay right here. And that's a good place for me to be. So when I begin to live it just one day at a time, then everything begins to change. And guess what? It makes sense. God's grace is right there. And that's what I want, right? But what is accomplished by looking at my past? That's something you got to ask yourself. Why would I want it? Some people are like, I never want to go back and look at my past. Well, we established the fact that there is a time to go back and look at it. And looking at our past shows the motivators in our life. What's a motivator in your life? In other words, it's something we develop between 2 and 8 years old, pretty much our pattern or the way we're going to be. Right? And what are those called? Motivators. In other words, why do I react a certain way every time? Why is my default mechanism to go back to an old behavior? Well, why would I want to know what those are? So I don't have to live with them anymore. Once I establish them, then I can make a choice to no longer live under them. I can move forward. And what a breakthrough that is. What an awesome breakthrough that is. Because what I start realizing is, yeah, no wonder. I start looking at the 6th and 7th step. I start looking at defects of character, and I start going, boom. That's why I keep doing that. That's where that defect of character comes from. I don't have to do it. And you know I'm going to ask you the question because I ask you every time we talk about 6th and 7th step. Who in here has worked the 6th and 7th step? Good, because I never have either. What does the 6th and 7th step do? It works us, right? And so now you know why it works us. So as those motivators come along and I start reacting a certain way, like I get angry. You want to see me get angry? It's not so much anymore, but man, it used to be. Do anything with my finances. Touch my money, we got a problem, right? I'm like, you really want to take me on that? Right. The point is that I have started realizing that I felt like somebody was always taking something from me. Literally, I was bullied early in my life, and these kids would take my daggum lunch money. And so I started realizing that little motivator back then has caused me more issues than almost anything else. One of my greatest character defects, right? But now I start to see that coming. I start going, ooh, where's that fear coming from? Because that's all it is, right? We're all motivated by fear. And so we sit there with the fear and we're like, where is this coming from? And all of a sudden it's like, you know what? This is some stupid motivator that really has no basis in my life any longer, and I don't have to live in it any longer. I get to make the choice to move forward. What a deal. So we can begin to change, and we can change them from doing what? Controlling us. We begin to control them. How do I do that? I lay it down and say, okay, God, you take it. I can't do it anymore. You take it. I don't know how sometimes to get past certain things. Man, anger was one of my big ones, right? Why? Because my motivator was, I grew up around a lot of angry people. And so I thought that's how you handle things. You know? It's like, I'll kick your butt. I mean, that was, you know, and it wasn't that nice. But that was the terminology or the feeling that I had every time something came up that felt wrong. It was amazing being dyslexic and going to school and not knowing you're dyslexic, feeling like you're absolutely stupid, And so you begin to overcompensate other ways, right? And if you're a little physically bigger, you take it out that way, right? Call me stupid one more time. And the whole time it's in my head, how stupid are you? See, those motivators had to go. Now I look at it differently. Dude, give me a problem, I'll figure a way. Because I've had to figure ways around everything my entire educational life. So guess what? I'm real good with solution. I don't have a problem with it. I literally, if you come to me, if you work for me, and you come to me and you say, hey, Chef, listen, I've got an issue. What's the first thing, he works for me, what's the first thing I ask for? What's the solution? Let's get in the solution. And that means, see, I can't live in my past and get into the solution. Because you know what my past was? Yeah, that's the way we take care of it. No longer. Isn't God good? He gives us all these really cool things and cool ways to get around it. So when I begin to change and I see change happen in my life, then the biggest thing that I have to let go of is denial. And what do I mean by that? How bad was it? Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought, or maybe it was worse. But the point is, the big book's very clear on page 416. And what does it say? Acceptance is what? The answer to all my problems. Well, why is that? Because part of acceptance is, I don't know how to do this, God, you do. I'll accept the fact that I don't know how to do it. And then he begins to take over. You see, one of the things you got to do is you got to believe Romans 8:28. And it says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God. Here's the funny part, right? Most people realize this. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good. Period. But there's no period, right? It actually says, of those who what? Love God. And are called according to his purpose for them. What's his purpose? Dude, Jeremiah 29:11, it's pretty clear, isn't it? Tells us what? That he has a plan for us, and it's not to what? Hurt us. It's to help us. So, see, part of the problem is I always believed that God was out to get me more than out for me. Well, acceptance tells me one day I finally got to the point, okay, God, his third step for me. I go, okay, God, here's the deal. I'll turn my will and my life over to your care. And when you screw it up, it's your fault. I don't care. Self-centered driven. Doesn't matter. Got me where I was going because he never has. He never has. So how about living in today? Let's talk about that for a minute. There's no time like the present. Anybody ever heard that before? Well, guess what? There isn't any time except the present. Where else you going to live? You may be living yesterday. Listen, I'd love to sit there and live back in my 30s or 20s, but it ain't happening. It ain't going to happen. I'm 60 years old. That ain't going to happen. So I get to live in today. Now let me help you with that one. This is so cool. You know what I got today? Got grown kids. And you know what grown kids give you? Grandkids. I'm enjoying living in today instead of going, oh, I wish I'd done this when I was younger. I wish I'd done that when I was younger. I wish I hadn't gone to jail 7 times sober. But I did. But I can't get hung up in that. I just go, that was life. And that's been a long, long, long time ago. And I'm grateful for where I am today. I wouldn't give anything for where I am today. Man, my 10-month-old grandbaby almost said my name like I could almost hear it, you know. That was enough for me, you know. I mean, Holly's over there shooting video. You got to see this. You know, I don't care. All she did was go, pa, 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 pa. I went, there's Papa. I got it. Right? It's the nice things that happen to us today. The relationships I have. I just got back from the beach, man, with a group of people that I got sober with, and we've been friends for 40 years. Where else do you get that? And I've enjoyed my life with them. But one of the things is, when we live in today, I know this is going to sound really stupid, but we got to live in the present. That means in every way, physically, emotionally, mentally, in every way. That's why, as I live in today, I go back to that same thing. Mercy and grace. Mercy and grace. See, isn't that so cool? Because here's the funky thing, is we're promised that there'll be problems tomorrow. Anybody ever saw those signs out in front of the bar and you kind of got excited for a minute that said, free beer tomorrow? When's tomorrow come? Never. So why don't I just stay in the present? Why don't I just stay where God's got me right here and right now? One of the things that I think people do is that they want to make their past their present. You know what I mean by that? It's like you meet somebody, you go out with them, and you just like emotionally vomit your story. They didn't ask you for that. Matter of fact, it's not important. Here's the funny thing. Holly and I never went through that, right? My wife and I never experienced that. So here's the cool thing. I didn't ask her about her past. She didn't ask me about my past. And so over the past 35 years, we've learned a lot about each other that as you learn about it later, it's comical. When you look at something from 20 years ago, it's kind of funny, right? We're the only group of people that I know that can go to a meeting and somebody says, yeah, I got a DUI, and everybody does what? Yeah, right. I mean, what county? Right? We're the only ones that can make a comedy out of something that's tragic in other people's life. Why? Because we've learned to move on. We've learned not to be trapped in that. We don't have to live in it any longer. So one of the things that I have to also realize is I can't allow my past to control my future. I can't be afraid of what God's got for me. And I hear it all the time, and people don't even realize what they're saying. Well, I got a friend of mine. Well, I've lived longer than anyone in my family, any male in my family. So every day, I guess, you know. I'm like, dude, why not get excited because you got a day? Instead of going, well, you know, I'm just hoping tomorrow ain't the big one. Wow. Who wants to live in that? So be consistent in your walk. Be consistent in your recovery. Let's look at Hebrews 13:8. And it says, Jesus Christ is the what? Come on, everybody. The same when? Yesterday, right? No. Today. Every day. The same. And how about that? What a great lesson. What a great lesson from Jesus himself to live every day consistently. And you see, here's the funny thing. If you just put him first, it'll work out like that. Matter of fact, he even tells us that. He's like, look, dude, if you put me first, I'll work everything else out for you. You don't really have to worry about it. You're going to anyways, but you really don't have to worry about it. So let me give you something to worry about. Hey, tomorrow there's going to be, you know, some troubles. But let's live in today. And that's exciting to me because we don't have to live in that. So do yourself a favor. Find your joy and freedom in the present. Papa God and a relationship with Jesus Christ himself will change everything for you. That's the best way to live here and live in the now, right? Thanks. Let's close it out like we always do. So who's the only one that gives us grace each and every day? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us our sins. Give us our daily bread. You guys did it to me again. We're going to start over. I'm going to teach you. All right, here we go. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread. And what? Forgive us our trespasses as we what? Forgive those who trespassed against us. Lead us away from temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the what? The kingdom, the power, and the glory for how long? Forever and ever. Amen.